intro?
Hi, welcome to the Taco Cast. I'm Crystal.
I'm Will.
You're our audience, and thank you for joining us on this lovely Sunday afternoon, morning, whatever time it is that Will gets this uploaded. Thank you for joining us.
Probably evening.
Evening. Yeah.
So, for today's topic, we chose genealogy.
Did we? Because it's not what we were talking about literally 5 minutes ago when you deleted the thing because I said the thing that I wasn't supposed to say because you have to edit it out.
Well, since the topic was going that direction, let's talk about genealogy. The genealogy test that you can take at home to find out about your ancestry. I hear that you recently took the 23andMe test. Would you like to share a little bit about why you took it, and along with telling everybody out there what you found the most interesting about the 23andMe results?
Oh, okay. Well, I took it because I'd already had a little bit of genetic testing done, as you know, because of my cancer diagnosis. And it got me thinking that I learned about all these, apparently 5 ticking time bombs that were resting in my genetic code. But I was curious about what kind of fun stuff that isn't going to kill me might be floating around in there. So I've been thinking about it for quite a while, and I decided that I was going to go ahead and get one of those home DNA kits and spit in a vial and have them tell me some stuff about my history. That was 2 3 I think, in 2 or 3
So you took the test, and was there anything that the genealogy report that came back with that was more surprising than others that you didn't think was going to be in your
yeah, actually there was French in on my genealogy report, and nobody in my family ever talks about anyone from France, so that was definitely a surprise.
Was it a large percentage, or
larger than the other percentage? My great grandfather, one of my great grandfathers, had come to the U.S. from Germany just before the start of World War II. And so I expected to see a higher percentage of Jewish lineage. It was actually lower than I had anticipated. And then there was that French, which just came out of nowhere. Most of my family on both sides is German, so I expected the large percentage of German in there. I know that my grandfather is a member of the Dunn family from Scotland, so I expected to find the Scottish ancestry. Irish, I also expected, because from the research I've done, it seems like the Dunns actually came to Scotland from Ireland, so yeah, I'd expected that. I didn't expect there was a trace percentage of from I want to say it was Western Africa, not 100%. Didn't expect that, and there was a little bit of Native American, which I hadn't expected either. I pretty much expected German and Jewish, and then I got with a little bit of Scottish flair, and then all of a sudden there's French people popping up in my history. I'm like, oh, where'd you guys come from?
Insert joke here.
My grandmother had a phrase for that. She called it a stray cock in the hen house.
Yes. If you'd like to boost your Irish intake, I'm here for you.
Oh, wow. That was not the joke I was talking about. But thanks, babe. Thanks.
Yeah. So, going back to the reason why you had taken the test in the first place, is there something that you were able to learn from that leads to more relying on the genetic side of? You said that there were 5 things ticking time bombs in your DNA.
Shortly after I'd concluded my breast cancer treatment, one of my providers had asked me if I wanted to have genetic testing done for tumor tumor mutations, genetic mutations that increase your likelihood of having particular kinds of cancer. And I had hesitated because protections for people that have hereditary diseases or a genetic propensity for certain diseases are constantly under attack in the U.S. And I didn't necessarily want to have my genetic profile known to my insurance company and then all of a sudden have all of those protections removed and have my insurance then able to charge me 10 times as much because, well, you got this DNA.
Well, you already have to pay more the way it is because you're a woman.
Not now, but that was a point in time where a person's gender would change their the amount that they had to pay. But ultimately, after talking it over with some of my providers, I'm already a cancer patient. So in the event that those protections are removed, I'm already screwed. So I might as well do the test anyways. The other point to that is none of our kids have been tested for genetic propensity for cancers. And if I got that test, we would know fairly well whether or not they might have those mutations, and then they wouldn't have to take that test, and then should those protections be removed, they won't be dinged. So one of the reasons for having that test a lot of people don't realize is that while there's genetic factors that increase your likelihood of getting cancer, for a lot of cancers, they're spontaneous. There's no genetic component. So most cancers that happen don't have a genetic influence, but having a genetic influence. So genetics doesn't really affect cancer incidence in a population, but it does affect cancer incidence in an individual.
So, sticking with that, ethics.
Mm-hmm.
For the insurance company to deny or increase your rates based on your genetics, and saying, look, you already have a predisposition to have these 5 ticking time bombs, as you put it, in your genetic code, we're going to have to charge you more. Where do you fall in the line of that? Do you think that morally and ethically that is wrong for them to get that information, or do you think that that could actually be beneficial for an insurance company or morality? I don't know what I'm trying to get at there.
Ethics and morality are honestly 2 separate things, but they have a lot in common. But I will say right off the bat, I think it's unethical as fuck because it's all about money, and genetics isn't destiny. There's no possible way for us to eliminate all confounding factors, so you never know exactly what causes a particular thing. All you know is that these particular genes affect this particular protein production, which increases your likelihood of X. But there's also diet, there's also your environment, there's also your psychological health. People who are under immense amount of stress produce large amounts of stress hormones, exacerbates other conditions. There are a myriad of factors that goes into a person's health, and penalizing a person for one thing that they have literally no control over is some shady shit.
So, taking world news and everything that is going on in the world right now, currently, with the coronavirus. Now,
I don't think you're supposed to say that word.
Yeah, well, too late. When it comes to the coronavirus, now I read an interesting article, and I'm not sure what publication it was, but it was a paper that was written by a team of doctors. I believe they are from the Mayo Clinic, and it was up for for peer review. It was a peer review paper, or something along that lines. It might have maybe whatever it was, the review of that review. But
honestly, it's easy to get confused because you'll have a paper that's put out, and then somebody writes an opinion about that paper, and someone writes an opinion about their opinion about the paper, and by the time it reaches the public, it's so hard to tell what you're actually reading.
Right. So they were talking about genetics and coronavirus, and coronavirus, is more deadly to certain populations, but just by sheer genetics. And then there's the part where people are more susceptible because they have pre-existing conditions, which goes along with their genetics. and but yet we're putting healthcare dollars in other areas as opposed to taking care of where we know that they're harder hit because of who the population within those areas. Do you think that there will become a time when we start genetic testing people before we actually treat them?
It's going to depend on what treatments are going to be, and I do see that happening for different reasons. Um, there are certain medications that are on the market for certain conditions that we know have a huge benefit for people with certain genetic profiles and almost no benefit to people with other genetic profiles. So, if we continue doing certain treatments along those lines, it actually might become beneficial because why go through three for a lot of maintenance medications for certain conditions? They have you on a treatment for X amount of time, usually a month or more, because you have to establish a certain level of medication in your system, then see if it's working, wean you off, put you on another one. So why would you want to spend upwards of 3 months on a medication that's not working for you, not maintaining your condition, not making you feel better, when a genetic test would be able to point your provider in the direction of a medication that would benefit you or would most likely benefit you?
Okay.
On the other hand, genetic testing is prohibitively expensive, especially when you're talking stuff like whole genome sequencing. That's one of the reasons why I laugh at people who think that vaccines are that they're going to extract your DNA and do genome sequencing. First off, the amount of trace tissue that's going to be on a needle after you've had your vaccine is pretty minute, and secondly, no one wants to spend that much money. A whole genome sequencing is terribly expensive, and there's not a lot of laboratories that do it with commercial access in the United States.
But could you replicate the DNA that's left behind on the needle?
So you're talking about PCR testing?
Yeah.
Yes and no. So the concept of PCR is it's basically a DNA amplification.
Right.
But it's just a segment. So talking viruses, right? So we know that there's X segment of code which is unique to this virus. So then we'll take that segment of code, embed that in the molecule whose name I would know on any other given time, but I don't right now. It'll seek it out. If it finds it, it'll make a copy of it. Make a copy of it, make it a copy of it, make it a copy, until it gets to the point to where you've got a testable amount of that in your specimen. That's why even though the tests are fairly rapid, you have to wait, and you're waiting for that replication process to take place. Then you test it, you find it, boom, it's positive. So the issue with that is also expensive, but it's coming super, super cheap. But the issue with those tests is they're also, again, for just small sequences. They're not for whole entire genomes. And they're really, really, really sensitive just because of their nature to contamination. The slightest bit of contamination. So when you are handling PCR testing, everything needs to be sterile. Your collection needs to be as sterile as possible. Your processing needs to be as sterile as possible. Your transport needs to be as sterile as possible, because most facilities, even if they do their own testing, they're not doing their own PCR testing. Most, and not all. So your transport needs to be as sterile as possible, and then when it reaches the testing laboratory, it's unpacked sterile, it's warmed sterile, it's tested sterile. So there's a ton of opportunities for messing that up.
So where do you see the future going when it comes to medications based upon someone's DNA?
Honestly, I see it remaining the purview of people with money. I would like to see it something that more people would have access to. The idea of tailor-made medication, to me, I think that that's amazing. One of the issues that we have with medications, and one of the reasons why so many people are non-compliant with disorders like bipolar and schizophrenia and stuff like that, is that the side effects of their medication are arguably almost as bad as the condition that they're treating. and the idea of targeted therapy based on a person's particular what will work for a person. Please edit that out so I don't look like a complete dumbass.
No, I'll edit it. That'll be the highlight, the thumbnail.
That'll be the thumbnail. We go, blah, 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 blah. I can make the English.
Go ahead.
I love the idea that we would be able to tailor make medication for somebody specifically to them, because I'm really hopeful that such a thing will be able to eliminate a large amount of side effects. Possibly not with psychoreactive medication because it's always scattershot. And when it comes, you're affecting the whole entire organ when the disorder isn't in the whole entire organ. And when you're talking neurotransmitters, they function differently in different areas of the brain. You've got neurotransmitters that act as agonists in one area and antagonists in another area that aren't even in one area. And that's part of the reason why the medication, why it affects people like it does.
My friend who has schizophrenic dysphaective disorder spoke of medication as a birdshot. It's like standing 50 feet away and shooting something with a shotgun when you're only trying to hit something as small as a dove. You would blow the damn thing apart. But you will hit it. And it will be effective in the short term.
Yeah, there's a huge problem with non-compliance for medication for people with bipolar and schizophrenia. And I didn't understand until I was studying the medications and I was talking to people who were taking them and I realized, this is awful. Yeah. This is, no wonder, because to me, before I'd started studying it more in depth, I was just like, you have an illness and here's medication that will take care of you. I was, in my head, it was like, if you were diabetic, why wouldn't you take your insulin? That's just stupid. Well, it's not the same thing. That would be like if you're diabetic and you take your insulin and your insulin also affects your ability to think, your sex drive and everything else. Well, then you might be like, I'll just cut back on the biscuits and I don't necessarily need the insulin.
Unless you get something that, that's 4 hours or longer and you need to see a doctor. I mean, that was a side effect of and the medication was meant for something completely different. But back to genetics and the 23andMe testing. I don't think that we're going to find, if we had our children tested, and take the 23andMe, our son would come back perfect. He'd be perfect +1.
Our children are adorable +1. Yeah, actually, Elizabeth wanted to do it too, and she elected to purchase her own kit.
I believe she already has it.
Yeah, did she already spit in the tube for it?
I don't know if she's already done it or not. I sent it off, but our son would be perfect +1.
Perfect +1.
That's perfect. Just a little bit extra. Because that's how he is.
He is pretty extra. Our baby is pretty extra.
Okay. Just a little bit, though. Just a little bit. Mommy, catch.
Oh, that is not my favorite game.
All right, so genetics and genetic testing. I think we've pretty much covered. I don't like maybe it's just me because I'm worried about Big Brother and Big Brother finding out about what's in my genetic code and testing. And I don't want them to know what is in there and what's going to possibly, be my ticking time bombs. I already caused enough ticking time bombs within my own life and, and how I treat this vessel of mine.
That is a legitimate concern. At this point in time, with the state of genetic testing as it is now, there's very little information that they're probably going to actually want because it doesn't correlate to much outside of personal interest. Tracing lineages, familial relationships. Your hair is probably red. Stuff like that. In the future, as our understanding of the human genome grows, which it's been doing on leaps and bounds, that information will become much more important because that information all genes is proteins.
Right.
They're made of protein, and that's what they code for. Make this protein at this time. Stop making this protein at this time. But all of that drives the construction of an incredibly complicated organism. As we learn more about what those do and how they do it, that information will become much more important to certain people. The other thing to keep in mind, however, is that when you're doing those particular tests, you're not getting your whole genome, typically.
The 23andMe?
Yeah.
Well, that brings up an interesting point. How much of the DNA or genome are they actually testing to give you these answers? And the second part of that would be, how accurate is the actual test?
It's accurate, but you're always going to find variability because their data pools are different. So if you have it done at one facility versus another facility versus, I think there's 3 main ones now. There's Ancestry, there's 23andMe, and then I believe there's a 3rd one now. And there is one that actually does do whole genome sequencing. I don't remember their name off the top of my head. It was expensive, and I was like, I don't care, so I didn't do that one. But
well, how are you supposed to get all the ticking time bombs? Maybe you have.
I already have a number of the ticking time bombs. Also, they don't. 23andMe does not test for a huge number of cancer markers. That is specialized testing does.
So that's an option.
It's an option, and they only test for certain ones. So one of the things to keep in mind also is that every test that you're doing, you have to go through. You have to get approval. Blah 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 blah. You can't just do a DNA test and offer it. There's a process that you have to go through. The genetic testing that I had done through my oncologist is a completely separate. The technique is almost the same, but they were testing for specific genes, and it's just a yes or no question. Yes, you have this one. No, you don't. Yes, you have this one. They keep the rest of your information at the place that I banked my DNA with when I had my cancer test, because they're constantly evaluating it against other patients to see if there's other correlations. And I agreed to that when I had it done.
There's ever going to be a correlation because you're 1 in a billion.
And there's billions of us. I'm sure there's another one out there somewhere. And basically it is continuing research. So you're basically assigned a number. They have your medical history assigned to that number, but there's no personal identifying information anymore. And then their researchers keep it, and they're going, and I'm okay with that because any little bit that I could help to the future of cancer research, yeah, knock yourselves the fuck out. My titties is already gone, but maybe somebody else's can be saved. That's right. Yes, they're fake.
Make sure everybody can see the shirt. It says, "Heck yeah, they're fake. The real ones tried to kill me." So, along that lines, though, of testing your DNA, should we then take your DNA and enter it into CODIS to see how many crimes you've committed out there? Let's not do that. All right. Speaking of DNA testing in CODIS, it brings up point number 2. Question number 2 is: does CODIS test the entire DNA, or are they doing what kind of like 23andMe are doing, just a sample of and not testing the entire genome?
I'm not actually sure. So the history of DNA testing is kind of complicated. So you've got basic karyotyping, which is literally just what does your DNA look like. Do you got a bunch of fatty pataties and you're missing one? And that's, how, you've got your XY chromosomes. That comes from that
XY or XXY or...
Oh, you listened. I said things and you
I'm
listened.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm so happy.
I do listen a lot. I don't want you to, get an overinflated, sense of ego or anything. I remember a lot of stuff.
You remembered.
I know. Yeah. That's why we've been together for so long, because I do hear you. I just, yeah.
So
I sit quietly and open my ears and close my mouth.
So that X and Y comes from the shape of those chromosomes, what they look like. Looks like an X, looks like a Y.
Right.
And like you mentioned, there are actually 6 viable permutations. It's not just X and Y.
Yeah.
There's nothing in X. There's X, 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 Y. Yeah. And that's literally all you're learning when you do karyotyping is just what do these chromosomes look like. Then you get deeper into that with when you're looking at the actual genes itself, and you've got issues with microdeletions and additions, and that's when those cells are dividing. They should be making copies of themselves, and then separating, right? Well, they make a copy, and a couple little strands from here get stuck on this one. So now you've got additions and deletions, and they're small. But again, remember that genes, really, they're just coding for proteins. Make this protein, stop making this protein. Well, if you've got a deletion or an addition, you might make more or less than you need, or not turn off that production when you're supposed to, blah, 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 blah. When you're talking development of a human being, that can cause issues. They're finding now that autism is associated with micro additions and deletions in the genetic code. They've identified a couple of specific ones that seem very closely tied to autism.
You can cure it with carrot juice. I heard.
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Oh. You mean
you can't cure genetic issues with carrot juice?
Jenny McCarthy said so.
Yes, well,
all right, but I don't want to make this about her. But genetic testing. Are you ever worried about your genetic code falling into the wrong hands?
There's nothing they can do with it.
I don't know. Maybe they could clone you.
Cloning
and then in 30 years from now, you don't know what's going to happen in 30 years.
That's
30
true.
years from now, a brand new, young, better model of Crystal could show up on our front doorstep and say, "Hi, I'm Crystal," and we'll be looking at the younger version of you in 30 years because they made it from your clone.
I don't see the problem with that.
I do. There's only one Crystal. There's only gonna be one Crystal.
I mean, legitimately, I don't see the problem with that. The only thing cloning would do, the only detriment would be is that it would stymie genetic diversity because you're just recycling existing.
Yeah, but so many people want to clone themselves. They want to live forever. They want that, maybe they find a way to freeze your brain, and then clone you and make a younger body that's not defective, and then stick your brain back in it.
That is a really, really great idea, but currently wouldn't work just because of the way human development works.
Well, we don't know what happens in 30 years.
No, we don't.
On Mars.
But keeping in mind that human development is a reactive process. We're very our development is influenced heavily by our environment. Take for instance the development of the vision, right? It's an interactive process between the eyes and the brain. If the eyes aren't receiving certain signals, that area of the brain just doesn't develop.
Why don't do it?
Anyways, and it's efficient because why develop a portion of the brain that you're not using, right? The human body, especially the brain, is very, very resource hungry, so it's also very, very efficient and will cut out whatever it doesn't think it needs. Well, it's the same thing with human musculature, our lungs, and everything like that. They develop as we use them in attunement with the environment in which we're using them. So you can't just grow a body in its prime because it's not interacting with the environment. You could grow a human body and probably grow it to adulthood, but you're going to wind up with something that's got very substandard musculature.
You think anybody's tried it yet?
Oh, yes. I'm sure people have tried it, yes, already.
So, can you alter DNA?
Yeah.
Can you go in and say, look, this part's defective, and cut it out, and
That actually happened in Australia. The first recipient of targeted gene therapy, they used a virus. So she had a genetic disorder which made her liver function extremely low. They took a small section of her liver. They took a virus. They took her genetic code, cut out the bad part, had coding for a functional liver coded in, put that into the virus. Viruses replicate by injecting their genetic code into a cell, for basically conscripting the cell's replication process, making a shit ton of copies of themselves, proteins, and then explode. Yeah, the thing. So, anyways, put that into the virus, and then put that chunk of her liver. This only worked because the human liver is one of the few organs that will regenerate itself. This wouldn't work, with like a heart or whatever. Anyways, took that chunk of liver, bathed it in that viral soup, injected it with the good cells. Then once it starts to replicate, it's replicating this healthy tissue, and then they implanted her with this healthy liver.
So in the future, in this dystopian world, we're able to replicate human beings, and we could form armies of mindless robots that will just do what the government wants.
It would actually probably be much more efficient to make robots, because, like we discussed earlier, making a fully functioning
We don't
human
know
would
that.
be
We don't know what the
cost-prohibitive.
future is going to bring.
This is true.
Once,
we don't.
Once Elon Musk builds the supercomputer and the super brain to be able to control everything, it'll be okay. Just follow along with the program, Crystal. Follow along.
Are you okay?
Well, I mean, we've had movies like that have come true.
Yeah, it's because humans are prone to hubris, and while we're aware of it, we don't ever do anything to stop it.
Oh. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add to your genetic testing, or the subject on genetic testing?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. I'll never have it done.
You don't have to.
I'm never gonna have it done.
Okay, babe.
I've already signed the DNR and the no taking of my fucking cells or my DNA.
Those are two separate things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Stay away from me, you science people. Stay away. Ah! I'm being touched by a scientist. All right. I think we should end it there.
I think you should hit the stop button, you silly man.
Well, you got to say goodbye.
Bye.
Uh.
Were you gonna hit that stop button, or am I just gonna keep staring into the middle distance?
Bye. We're ready.
I can't believe you deleted the last part.
Well, I can do that. I have the magical finger. Doop, ba-doop, gone. So we're recording now, right now. We're live while you are having a nervous breakdown because I pushed you there. How do you really feel?
I just want to go play Animal Crossing.
Animal Crossing? Sounds like a great game. All right, you're going to do the intro.